Hey there, folks. Eric here. Wanted to get on here today and talk to you about the ride I did this last weekend. On Saturday, July 19th, I participated in the 36th annual Rain Ride. That stands for Ride Across Indiana, and it's put on by the Bloomington Bicycle Club. This course is around 155 miles of flat to rolling terrain that stretches from Terre Haute, Indiana at the western end to Richmond, Indiana to the east. It mainly follows US 40, although it does take some back roads to get around Indianapolis. Before I talk about how the ride went, I do have to say that this kind of wasn't part of the plan. Earlier this year, I contacted my cousin Brandon, who lives near Indianapolis. He's a runner and occasionally rides a bike, but he's mainly a runner. And I knew he was interested in doing some cycling, so probably 6 months ago, I got a hold of him and said, hey, there's this thing called the Rain Ride. Would you be interested in it? One day, 155 miles riding across Indiana. And at the time, he was a little bit lukewarm, didn't really commit to anything, so hadn't heard from him since regarding that ride. So just about 5 days before the ride was going to take place, he got a hold of me and said, so hey, are you coming to my house on Friday and we'll just spend the night and figure everything out there? But I hadn't heard from him, so I figured we weren't doing the ride. So I really hadn't planned on going out and doing this ride, but as I'm training to do a 24-hour race this upcoming weekend, I thought, what better way to train for that than to sit on a bike for about 10 hours and ride across Indiana. So I ended up going on the website and signing up. My entry fee was $100, although there might be a fee for signing up early. And what you get for that $100 is a really nice t-shirt. I'll show you what the back of that shirt looks like. Really neat finisher keychain. I believe they do that keychain every year, and you can collect those. And also there were 5 really nice stops with a lunch right in the middle stop. So just around every 30 miles, there was a stop where they had water, all kinds of snacks from bananas and pickles and granola bars. They also had mix that you could put in that water, Gatorade and such. So really good support along this ride. There were also bike shops that would come and repair bikes, and just super, super good support for this ride. So in my mind, that's $100 well spent, considering everything that encompassed. I'm not exactly sure how many cyclists participated in the Rain Ride this year, although I know it was just over 300 that finished. But at 7 o'clock Saturday morning, everybody left from Fairbanks Park, which is in Terre Haute. They had everybody line up according to what you thought your finishing time was going to be. Faster people in the front, of course, and they had it by how many hours you thought you were going to finish in. So Brandon and I decided to line up around the 10-hour mark. Like I said, he is not a cyclist. He's a runner who occasionally cycles. And for the day, he was also borrowing a bike. The night before, we decided that my Trek Cross Rip would be a little more comfortable for him over the course of that day, it being more of an upright bike. However, the Cross Rip is my winter bike, and at the moment, it is desperately in need of a tune-up. So he didn't have the best tuned-up bike to do that ride in. Now, just so I didn't make it too hard on Brandon by riding my road bike, which is my Specialized Tarmac, I rode my gravel bike, which is my State 6061 all-road with the 700C wheel set. Perfect bike for the ride. Wasn't trying to ride really fast, but I wanted to be comfortable. And that bike, along with the electronic shifting, it's the perfect bike for that sort of ride. Really glad I rode the State that day. So like I said, we lined up around the 10-hour mark, and at 7 o'clock, everybody took off. Takes a little bit to get out of town, but in that time you can sort of find a group to ride with, get warmed up. The nice part about riding this kind of distance is you don't have to warm up. You just start riding, and as you go, you get warmed up. But like I said, we found a couple groups that we could ride with, and I felt pretty good about the pace we were going. We were going probably 17, 18 miles as we headed out of Terre Haute into the first food stop. So about 30 miles in was the first food stop. We took that opportunity to refill our bottles with water, kind of stock up on a couple snacks and head back out. Sometimes the group you ride in with isn't necessarily the group you leave the rest stop with. So it took us a couple more minutes to find another group we could ride with. And once again, going along at a pretty good pace to the next stop. Somewhere between that first and second rest stop, it began to dawn on us that trying to keep the pace with the people that we were riding with wasn't necessarily going to work for Brandon. Like I said, definitely did not train for this sort of thing. So the hills were starting to get to him. The hills weren't that crazy, but if you're riding a total of 4,000 feet over the course of 155 miles and you're not used to riding hills, of course it's going to get to you, especially on a really heavy bike like that Crossroad. So it was after that second rest stop that we decided to be a little bit more conservative with our pace. Definitely didn't want to ride something that we couldn't maintain for the rest of the distance. So we didn't ride along with the pack this time. And it was during that stretch that the route actually veered off of US 40 and did some of those back roads around Indianapolis. So around the 75-mile mark, I noticed that Brandon really wasn't having a wonderful day. And I talked to him about it, and he thought, not training for this really wasn't a bright idea. And trying to do this whole ride, hurting as much as he hurt at the halfway point, wasn't necessarily a great idea either. So at that point, Brandon made the decision that at the middle rest stop, he was going to call it a day, which I absolutely support that decision. If you're not trained for something that you're trying to do, especially a ride like that, one of the smarter things you can do is to not hurt yourself. So at that middle stop, Brandon called it a day for himself, and I decided to ride the rest of it on my own. Now, the nice part for me about being trained for a ride like this is I was being really conservative about my pacing at the beginning, so I had plenty of energy left for the second half of this ride. I do have to pause for a minute and thank Brandon's wife for driving us around on this ride. She dropped us off at the beginning of the ride, picked him up at the middle of the ride, and was there to pick me up at the end of the ride. So having them be there at the end of the ride for me, I didn't want them to wait all day. I decided to see how fast I could do the second half of this route. So leaving from the lunch stop, I took off. I bet you I was averaging around 20 miles an hour until the next stop. Something I really used to like to do back when I was a runner in high school, and something that I unconsciously do when I'm out on a bike trail. If I see a rider in front of me, I kind of like gaining on that rider, trying to catch them, and then picking off the next one and the next one. So I used that opportunity to take a little bit of that stored energy I had and see if I could turn this into sort of a time trial. When I pulled into that fourth stop, I bet I was only there about 3 or 4 minutes. Filled up my water bottles, grabbed a quick snack, and I was out on the road. One thing I did want to try to find in this last bit of this ride is I did want to try to find a group to ride with again. You know how much easier it is when you're drafting in a group. And here I had been averaging close to 20 miles an hour just riding solo for the past 30, 40 miles. So as I went through, did try to find a couple groups. Eventually I did find a group that I was able to draft with and decided not to even stop at that fifth stop. So I rolled through that stop and found another group, and we noticed that the weather was starting to look pretty nasty on the horizon. It's not called the rain ride for nothing, I guess. So weather in the Midwest this time of year is pretty unpredictable. Even if the forecast says it's good, expect anything to happen. And this day, weather had actually called for scattered thunderstorms. So it was pretty good luck that we hadn't encountered any rain for the first 7 or so hours of this ride. But with about an hour and a half left in the ride, it did start to rain. Thankfully, not a crazy downpour. I didn't see any lightning, didn't even hear any thunder, but there was a pretty steady rain for the last, 30 or so miles. So just around 4 o'clock, I saw Richmond on the horizon, and at about 4:15, I rolled into the finish. Let's check out the stats for the day. 155.27 miles ridden, 8 hours, 35 minutes of moving time, 9 hours, 18 minutes of elapsed time for an average of 18.1 miles per hour. Considering this was a fun ride, not a race, I'm pretty happy about my performance that day. And considering that Brandon hadn't trained for this whatsoever, the 90 miles he got in was far more than I'd be able to with zero training. So kudos to Brandon as well. Overall, the rain ride is a wonderful event. Bloomington Bicycle Club did a great job of putting it on. All the food stops, all the support, the route was great. Although I do have to say I preferred those back roads going around Indianapolis to all the time we spent on Interstate 40. Drivers in Indiana do know that a lot of cyclists are going to be out there riding that day, though for the majority of the day you are riding along a major highway on the White Line. But I will say I felt very safe the whole time. Didn't really see any incidents to speak of. So great ride. Something I would like to get back and do again next year, if not just to collect more of those keychains. If you're watching this video and you rode in the 2025 rain ride, let me know what your experiences were. Or if you've ridden in it other years or plan on riding it in the future. Also, let me know what other kind of riding you're doing around the area. I'm always looking for rides like this to participate in. If you enjoyed this video or got any value out of it, I'd love if you subscribe to the channel. Also appreciate if you did all those cool YouTube things like liking and sharing, commenting, letting me know your experiences or your thoughts about the video. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you again soon. Thanks, guys.